When Elon Musk sat across from his son that night, he had no idea that the conversation would change him forever. What began as a casual dinner with Donald Trump soon turned into something much deeper, something personal, because when X looked his father in the eyes and asked a simple question, Musk was left speechless. That night, the ocean waves gently crashed against the shore as the sun sank into the horizon, casting long shadows over the vast Mar-a-Lago estate. The place, a symbol of power and wealth, seemed quieter than usual. Inside, chandeliers glowed with a golden hue, reflecting off the immaculate marble floors. Outside, the world buzzed with speculation, scandals, and the relentless murmur of politics. But for one night, none of that mattered. In a private room, away from cameras and strategists, Donald Trump and Elon Musk sat face to face. It was to be a closed-door meeting, a conversation about the future, artificial intelligence, censorship, space colonization, and perhaps the next election. Two of the most unpredictable men on the planet, sitting across from each other, unfiltered and unscripted, except for one detail. A child sat with them, lightly swinging his legs under the chair. He was Musk's youngest son, XAE-12, though most simply knew him as X. The boy had the same piercing blue eyes as his father, with a quiet intensity, as if he were always analyzing everything around him. He wasn't supposed to be there, but Musk, in his unpredictable manner, had decided to bring him along. He wanted to come, Musk said, when someone on Trump's team shot him a questioning look. I thought it would be interesting for him. Trump, always one to appreciate an audience, simply chuckled. Smart kid. Has more sense than most politicians. And so there they were, an unlikely triangle. 3 generations, 3 legacies, 3 futures. The conversation began as any other between these two men. Politics, the upcoming elections, the economy. Musk spoke about artificial intelligence and automation, warning that civilization was approaching a critical juncture where decisions had to be made before control was lost forever. Trump, ever the negotiator, leaned forward and lowered his voice. What's your next move, Elon? Are you running for office? Or do you prefer pulling the strings from behind the scenes? Musk smirked. You know I'd rather build things. Trump waved a hand. That's what they used to say about me before 2016. They laughed and took a sip of whiskey. The atmosphere wasn't hostile, but it was heavy, charged with the weight of 2 men who had shaped the world in their own ways. Then, something unexpected happened. The question that would change everything. X, still swinging his feet, turned to Trump and, in a soft but firm voice, asked, Mr. Trump, are you afraid of being forgotten? The air seemed to freeze. Musk, mid-sip, stopped. His gaze immediately fell on his son. Trump's hand paused for a second. Too fast for most to notice, but Musk caught it. Then, Trump did what was expected of him. He laughed. That signature laugh, part amusement, part performance. Forgotten? Kid, my name is on buildings all over the world, from New York to Scotland. People will talk about me for a long time. X didn't look away. I don't mean that. Trump leaned back, intrigued. Oh? Then what do you mean? The boy spoke again as if he had rehearsed the scene in his mind countless times. Maybe he had. I mean that when people talk about you in 100 years, what will they really say? Will they remember just your name, or who you truly were? Silence fell again. Not dramatically, like in a courtroom, but with a tangible weight. For the first time that night, Trump didn't respond right away. A flicker crossed his face. It wasn't fear or anger, but something deeper. Reflection. For a man who had built his life around winning and being larger than life, the question struck a nerve. Would history remember his victories or his controversies? Would he be remembered as a leader, a fighter, or a villain? Musk, silent, watched curiously, waiting for Trump's reaction. He had seen him dodge impossible questions, win debates, outmaneuver governments, and crush political rivals with just a few words. But now, Trump wasn't performing or defending himself. He was thinking. That was when Musk realized the conversation was just beginning. A moment of silence stretched, broken only by the distant sound of the ocean. The waves rolled on, indifferent to the weight of the questions floating in that room. Trump, always shrewd and in control of the narrative, now stared intently at the boy. Musk didn't intervene because he knew X had reasons for asking that question. He knew his son was neither bold nor disrespectful without a purpose. X was asking because he truly wanted to understand. Trump leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. His expression had changed. He no longer carried the usual joking and provocative attitude typical of public events. "I've built many things," he began, his voice lower, more personal, almost stripped of its theatricality. "Far more than most men will ever achieve. Towers, hotels, casinos, golf courses, even a presidency." X listened in silence. "And when all of that is gone?" he asked. Musk almost smiled. The boy never wasted time on small talk. Trump let out a sigh. "It won't be gone. My name is on every one of those places." X tilted his head. "But names fade." Musk noticed a subtle flicker of unease in Trump's eyes. The boy wasn't wrong. Time erodes everything. Buildings, businesses, nations, even memories. What truly withstands the passage of time? Trump drummed his fingers on the table, searching for the right words, and finally responded in a controlled tone. "It's not just about what you build, but how you make people feel." Musk raised an eyebrow, surprised by the candor. Trump continued, "People don't remember George Washington just because he's on a dollar bill. They remember him for what he made them feel, for the struggle, the leadership, and how he changed the course of things." X absorbed every syllable. "So, what's different this time?" The pause was brief. Trump exhaled through his nose. "I woke people up." X frowned. "What do you mean?" "I made a lot of people realize that power doesn't just belong to an elite. I showed them they don't have to passively accept what journalists or politicians tell them. I taught them they can fight." Musk recognized in that speech the essence of how Trump saw himself. A catalyst, someone who challenged the established order. Trump leaned back in his seat, looking at X. "You asked if I fear being forgotten. I don't, because I know one thing. I made everyone pay attention." X took a few seconds to respond, his voice just as calm but sharp. "But being remembered isn't the same as being understood." Trump froze. Musk sensed that in that moment, Trump hesitated between feeling challenged or seeing it as an invitation to reflect. The air grew heavier. Musk finally stepped in. "Yes, you changed things," he acknowledged. "But do you think they'll remember the right parts?" Trump narrowed his eyes. It was a valid question. With so many empires that had risen and fallen, what does history truly preserve? What does it choose to record? Trump cleared his throat and looked at Musk. "And you? Have you thought about that?" Musk shrugged. "All the time." Trump gave a slight smile. "That kid's a lot like you, isn't he?" Musk returned the smile. "He's not like me. He's like himself." Trump focused back on X. "All right, kid. Since you have so many questions, let me ask you one. What do you think really matters? What makes someone truly remembered?" X took his time to answer. When he finally spoke, he left both men in complete silence. "It's not power," he said firmly, looking at them. "Not money. Not the fight itself." He paused, and Trump gestured for him to continue. Then, X clarified, "It's how you transform the people closest to you." That statement, so simple and direct, made Musk look at his son and shake his head in admiration. Trump, however, didn't smile. He studied the boy carefully. "What do you mean?" X leaned in, resting his elbows on the table. "You talk about waking people up, about making them listen. That's big. But history isn't just made of big moments. It's built with small changes, too." His voice grew firmer. "Most people don't remember the names of kings or the exact words of their speeches. They remember how those leaders affected families, parents, what those people became because they lived in a world shaped by you." Trump exhaled slowly. X continued, "You say you'll be remembered because people paid attention. But what if they remember the anger more than the message? What if they remember the fight, but not the reason behind it?" Musk, leaning back in his chair, felt a mix of pride and surprise. Trump remained silent for a few moments before finally asking, "So, do you think I failed?" X shook his head. "I think you changed the world." A pause. "But I don't think you get to decide how history will record that." Trump's gaze shifted. Musk could tell those words had touched something deeper than usual. Trump drummed his fingers on the table again. He always did that when he was deep in thought. Finally, he asked, "And what about your father?" He gestured toward Musk. "You said people remember how a leader changes those around him. So tell me, how has he changed you?" Musk raised an eyebrow but said nothing. X looked at his father. Then He turned to Trump and answered with crystal-clear honesty, "He taught me that even the smartest man in the world can make mistakes." Musk smirked. "Can I take that as a compliment?" X shrugged. "It means you're not afraid to fail, and that's why people believe in you." Trump tilted his head as if he were both amused and thoughtful. "Interesting answer, kid. Because it's true." There was another moment of silence. Then Trump fixed his gaze on Musk. "You're raising a thinker, huh?" Musk chuckled. "I can't imagine it any other way." The conversation could have turned lighter, but it didn't. The notion still lingered in the air that history doesn't always preserve motives, only effects. Suddenly, Trump's expression grew serious again, and he leaned over the table. "Tell me, X, do you think you'll be remembered?" X met his gaze calmly. "I don't care if I will be." Trump raised his eyebrows at X's unwavering response. "Why?" "Because the people I love will remember me, and that's enough." Trump crossed his arms and let out a thoughtful sigh. He looked down at the table, rubbing his fingers together. Then, almost in a whisper, he admitted something that took both Musk and X by surprise. "I don't know if that would be enough for me." Musk leaned in, intrigued, frowning. Trump averted his gaze for a second, as if unsure whether he should have said that. But the words had already been spoken, raw, honest, vulnerable. Musk had known him for years, but he had never seen him this exposed. Before anyone could respond, Trump lifted his eyes again, his expression somewhat softer. "But I do know one thing." Musk and X waited. Trump gave a slight smile. "I like you, kid." X smiled back subtly. "I know." Musk burst into laughter. "Finally, you admit it." Trump leaned back in his chair, laughing and shaking his head. For the first time that night, he looked out at the sea. Outside, the waves kept crashing in their steady rhythm, filling the silence that stretched between them. The air carried the scent of salt and the weight of something unspoken. But it was the first time in a long while that Trump didn't have a ready answer. Musk noticed it immediately. He had seen him in debates, negotiations, and face-to-face with world leaders, always with the firm posture of someone who needed to win every exchange. But now, here, he was simply thinking. X, however, wasn't looking at the sea or at his father. He was watching Trump. "You're not sure if that would be enough," X finally commented. Trump exhaled through his nose, staring at the table. "I don't like losing, and I don't like being forgotten." Musk smirked. "I doubt anyone's going to forget you." But Trump's expression remained unreadable. X tilted his head. "Is that why you fight so hard?" Trump froze. X continued calmly, "Because if you stop fighting, do you feel like you'll disappear?" Musk raised his eyebrows, following the conversation closely. Trump studied the boy for a moment, drumming his fingers lightly on the wooden table. Then he let out a dry chuckle. "You ask some pretty uncomfortable questions for a kid." X shrugged. "Someone has to." Trump exhaled sharply and leaned back in his chair. "He got that from you, Musk." Musk smiled. "Partly." After a pause, he added, "And partly no." Trump smirked enigmatically. "Interesting way of saying you don't have all the answers." Musk let out a low chuckle. "No one does." X leaned in again. "But you still haven't answered my question." Trump frowned slightly, wary. "Which one?" X didn't hesitate. "What are you afraid of?" Silence took hold of the room. Musk adjusted in his seat, genuinely curious. Trump spent a few seconds tapping the table with his fingers, his signature habit when deep in thought. He could have deflected with a joke or changed the subject, as he had done countless times in public life. But he didn't. Instead, he let the words linger in the air before answering in a quiet voice. "I'm afraid of becoming small." Musk blinked, not immediately understanding. X frowned. "What do you mean?" Trump let out a slow breath, not looking at either of them as he explained. "I built. I fought. I reached the biggest stage in the world." His voice was firm, but there was a hint of melancholy underneath. "When you do that, do you know what the worst nightmare is?" X simply waited until Trump looked up, feeling like none of it mattered. Musk took a deep breath. He understood that feeling better than he liked to admit. He had spent his life building things that many deemed impossible, pushing humanity forward, leaving his mark on history. But deep down, he sometimes wondered too, what if, in the end, none of this makes a difference? X kept a neutral expression, absorbing his words. After a moment, he said, "Maybe you're asking the wrong question." Trump raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really?" X leaned in slightly. Instead of asking if the world will remember you, why not ask if the people closest to you will? Trump remained still. Musk narrowed his eyes, catching the depth of that provocation. X continued, because the world is big and forgets quickly, but those who truly know you, they remember. The revised version maintains the impact of the original, with better punctuation structure and fluency in Latin American Spanish. Who are you, really? And if the people around you don't remember you the way you'd like, maybe that's what scares you. The silence that followed was so dense that only the steady rhythm of the waves and the faint murmur of the wind could be heard. Trump said nothing. Musk watched him, noticing the subtle shift in the former president's expression. Then X leaned back, crossed his arms, and smiled. Checkmate. Musk let out a laugh. Trump blinked, stunned for a moment, then laughed too, but in a genuine way very different from the rehearsed laughs he usually displayed at public events. He shook his head. I have to admit, kid, you caught me off guard. X grinned wider. That's the best kind of checkmate, isn't it? Musk's eyes gleamed with amusement. Now you know how it feels, Trump. Trump exhaled, shaking his head. Indeed. You're raising a real chess master here. Musk shrugged. I just let him think. He does the rest on his own. Trump chuckled for a few more seconds, but soon his gaze returned to the ocean. For the first time in a long while, perhaps, he wasn't thinking about winning or controlling the narrative. He was just thinking, simply thinking. And as the waves continued crashing against the shore, something shifted. Because, although the world was still watching Donald Trump, for the first time in years, he was beginning to wonder if he had been seeing the world the right way. The waves kept their steady rhythm, filling the silence that had settled. The night air carried the salty scent of the sea and something more, something that hadn't been spoken aloud. Trump and the others remained in place without saying a word for a few seconds. Then, more relaxed, Trump leaned back and took a sip of his drink. Musk did the same. The conversation had shifted course, almost as if it had been orchestrated. After a pause, Trump observed the boy with renewed curiosity. For his part, X knew that his father was always thinking several moves ahead. Then, he turned to him. He had spent his life watching Musk in meetings and events, debating with geniuses about artificial intelligence, space travel, and the future of humanity. But that night, X wasn't interested in technology or grand plans. He wanted to know the man, not the icon. Dad, what's your biggest regret? Musk's glass hovered in the air for a second. He straightened in his chair, aware that Trump was also watching him. Lingering on the past wasn't his style. Musk had always focused on the next invention, the next challenge. But that question wasn't about rockets or programming codes. It was about Elon Musk as a person. Musk sighed. That's a broad question. X shrugged. So was yours. Trump smirked with a hint of amusement. Musk set his glass down on the table and ran a hand through his hair. I think my biggest regret is everything I missed out on. He looked at his own hands. I was so obsessed with building Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, that I didn't realize how much I was losing in the process. X straightened, paying close attention. Trump leaned in slightly, intrigued. Musk continued. I missed birthdays, first words, first steps, moments that never come back. I always convinced myself that it was worth it, that I was doing something bigger than myself, and that one day you'd understand, that when you looked at Mars and the future I helped build, you'd feel proud. Silence settled as Musk looked at his son. X, however, softly said, But the truth is, you're not sure if you made the right choice, are you? Musk swallowed hard. Would you do it differently? He hesitated. Through his mind passed sleepless nights, factories, endless meetings. Then he remembered all the progress he had brought to humanity. His tone lowered. I don't know. X tilted his head, as if understanding something Musk wasn't yet ready to admit. Then, Trump spoke. Let me tell you something about regrets. Musk and X looked at him. Trump interlaced his fingers. You can spend your whole life thinking about what you should have done differently, what you lost, what you did wrong. But at the end of the day, he paused. You can't change the past. You can only decide what you'll do now. Musk watched him in silence, absorbing the simplicity and depth of those words. He had always known that. After all, his life had been based on looking forward, on building the future. But when it came to his family, to his children, it wasn't so easy. X broke the silence. "And what are you going to do?" Musk frowned. "What?" X leaned back in his chair. "You said you regret missing important moments. So, what are you going to do to change that now?" Musk exhaled, massaging his temples. "You're not going to let me off the hook, are you?" X smiled with determination. Trump crossed his arms and chuckled. "I must admit I'm liking this kid more and more." Musk half smiled, shaking his head. His son was relentless. But maybe, just maybe, that was a good thing. "Fine. You won. I'll take a step back. I'll try to be more present." X raised an eyebrow. "Are you serious?" Musk nodded. "Seriously." The boy squinted, skeptical. "Promise it." Musk extended his hand. "I promise." They shook hands, but X, still smiling, added, "You'll also have to delete some emails, you know?" Musk pretended to groan. "Now you're exaggerating." Trump burst out laughing. "See? He knows how to trap you, Musk." Musk shrugged, feigning resignation. "Yeah, he does. And you know what? I don't care." Because in that moment, Elon Musk had a sudden clarity. The future wasn't just about taking humanity to Mars or revolutionizing transportation and artificial intelligence. The future was also sitting right in front of him, with the bright eyes of a boy who questioned him fearlessly, forcing him to rethink his priorities. With the waves crashing in the background and the night advancing, Musk realized there was still time to build something more, something that maybe mattered even more, a legacy that didn't depend on being remembered in history books, but on being remembered by the people who truly mattered. And that night, as the sea breeze caressed the darkness, the three of them remained there, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and X, immersed in a conversation none of them expected, but perhaps the three of them needed to have. A conversation about memory, legacy, family, and the inevitable impact of time on everything we build. The world could keep on chaos out there. The media would continue reporting scandals and predictions about the future. But in that room, illuminated by luxurious lamps, 3 generations reflected on the same enigma. How will they be remembered? And more importantly, by whom? What hung in the air wasn't just about power or success. It was about the meaning we give to our achievements and how the people closest to us ultimately become the most honest mirror of who we really are. Power, money, and fame make noise in the world, but often it's the whispered moments in personal life that determine the echo we leave behind. Trump, looking toward the darkness beyond the window, understood something he would never admit publicly, that the greatest battles are not always fought on the global stage, but within ourselves. Musk, looking at his son, felt a deep desire not to lose any more priceless moments. And X, who had started the night almost carefree, now saw in the faces of those 2 men how much a simple question could shake even the firmest pillars. They stayed there late, savoring the rare feeling of being away from cameras and external expectations. From time to time, they spoke about politics, technology, and future possibilities, but the tone of the conversation never returned to what it was, because in the face of a boy's question, there was something deeper intertwining their words. A shared humanity that wasn't always visible when talking about 2 giants like Trump and Musk. When the clock moved forward and the time came to say goodbye, Trump shook Musk's hand with a firmness that conveyed genuine respect. Then, he gave X a smile more sincere than the one he often showed in public. "Kid, you're a rare case. If you ever need anything from me, you know where to find me." X returned the smile without boasting, understanding that that night was not about winning debates, but about dialoguing, about understanding. Musk, for his part, felt a relief that was hard to explain. There were unresolved issues, decisions to be made, but something inside him had changed. Maybe, he thought, that was the true meaning of building something lasting. Not just buildings or rockets, but relationships. The sound of the sea continued, incessant. The stars, now sharper in the dark sky, silently watched over that place where, for one night, secrets were whispered, regrets confessed, and commitments made. Outside, far from the tide, the whole world continued debating about power and scandals, unaware that in the stillness of that room, a boy had led 2 men to reflect on what truly matters. When Elon and X finally returned home, Musk found himself looking at him differently. He was not just a smart kid. He was a living reminder that future generations will not only judge what we build for the world, but also how we love and care for those by our side. The future, after all, may well start with a conversation, with a dinner, with a simple question someone dares to ask. And so that night ended, without final speeches or big announcements, but with the feeling that everyone there in some way had been transformed. Because sometimes, all we need is a direct question that pulls us out of our comfort zone. And in those few hours, X, with his sharp mind, showed Musk and Trump that even the biggest icons on the planet can, and must, question how they will be remembered, and more importantly, by whom. Maybe time will erase names and facades. Maybe history books won't always reveal the true motivations behind every act. But, as X said, what truly endures is the way we touch the lives of those around us. What truly endures is the way we impact those around us. And if anyone still doubted that, they only needed to remember that night, where, in front of the sea and under the restless gaze of a child, Trump and Musk were left speechless and understood, in a fraction of a second, that life is not defined only by public victories, but by those small moments that reveal who we are at our most intimate, in front of those we love. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and leave your comment. Tell us where you're watching from, country and city. Thanks, and see you next time.